Chapter 5. The $250,000 covered the glass coffee table in neat banded bricks. Danny ignored the money. He held the leather-bound ledger. He flipped the thick cream pages. Columns of alphanumeric sequences filled the paper. Encryption keys. Routing numbers for shell companies registered in the Cayman Islands, Belize, and Cyprus. Jack Solis processed millions through these accounts. Trish stood on the opposite side of the table. She wore a white silk robe. She stared at the stacks of currency. Hunger pinched the corners of her eyes. She calculated the weight, the volume, the possibilities. "We packed the bags," Trish said. Her voice carried a frantic edge. "We book a private charter out of Opelika. We hit Nassau by dawn." "The money stays on the table," Danny said. Brick stood by the window, watching the morning sun ignite the Biscayne Bay water. He turned his massive, scarred head. "We wait for the boss." "The boss sits in his mansion," Trish hissed. She stepped toward her husband. "He let this convict risk his neck. We hold the cash. We hold the power. Do the math, Brick." "I protect the boss. I protect you." Brick crossed his thick arms. "I follow the protocol." The security intercom chimed. A sharp, digital chirp echoing in the sterile condo. Trish flinched. She looked at the door, then at the money. Brick walked to the wall-mounted monitor. He pressed a button. The screen displayed the high-definition feed from the lobby camera. A man stood before the lens. He wore a rumpled, tan linen suit. He possessed the thick neck and heavy shoulders of a former defensive lineman. Thinning gray hair topped a sunburned face. "Captain Howard," Brick said. Trish stopped breathing. The color drained from her face, leaving her cheekbones stark and sharp. "Howard never comes here. Easton meets him at the steakhouse or the boat slip." Danny closed the ledger. He tossed it onto the pile of currency. He felt the phantom chill of the Everglades swamp return to his blood. Howard represented the apex of the Miami food chain. Howard ran the tactical units, controlled the evidence rooms, and extorted the cartels. Howard put Danny in the concrete box 4 years ago. "Put the money in the duffel," Danny said to Trish. "Put the duffel in the master bedroom closet. Do it." Trish scrambled. She scooped the banded bricks into the nylon bag with desperate, trembling hands. She threw the ledger in last, zipped the canvas, and dragged the heavy bag down the hallway. "Open the door," Danny told Brick. Danny walked to the white leather sofa. He sat down. He crossed his legs. He rested his right ankle on his left knee. He draped his arm over the back of the sofa. He summoned the Easton Cross smirk. He stripped the adrenaline from his eyes, replacing it with the dead, clinical arrogance of a man who buys human lives in bulk. Brick pulled the heavy front door open. Captain Tip Howard stepped into the penthouse. He brought the smell of cheap cigars, stale sweat, and gun oil into the air-conditioned sanctuary. He surveyed the living room. His pale blue eyes missed nothing. He registered Brick's defensive posture. He registered the empty glass table. He locked his gaze on Danny. "Morning, Easton," Howard said. His voice rumbled, a deep, resonant baritone. "You violate the boundaries, Tip," Danny said. Flat tone. Zero inflection. Howard smiled. A bloodless crack in his sunburned face. He walked into the center of the room. He bypassed the sofa and approached the wet bar. "I prefer to conduct business face to face when the city catches fire. You possess an espresso machine. I require a double shot." Danny looked at Brick. He offered a microscopic nod. Brick moved behind the bar. He began working the chrome espresso machine. The grinder whined. Howard leaned against the bar. He unbuttoned his linen jacket. The movement exposed the black grip of a Sig Sauer P226 holstered on his hip. He looked at Danny again. He tilted his head, studying the angles. "We ate a phenomenal Wagyu ribeye last night," Howard said. "You picked up the check." "A generous gesture." "I appreciate generosity." "I value our relationship," Danny said. "Jack Solis experienced a bad night," Howard continued. 3 men walked into Eclipse. 1 man bypassed the biometric locks, terrorized the count room, and walked out with $250,000 in street cash and the master ledger. The survivors claim they looked the devil in the eye. They claim the devil wore your face. "Men invent ghosts to excuse their own incompetence," Danny said. "They described your tailored charcoal suit. They described your dead eyes." Howard took the small porcelain cup from Brick. He took a sip. He closed his eyes, savoring the bitter roast. "I sat across a table from you. I watched you eat a steak. You possess a concrete alibi. I provided the concrete. Then Jack Solis holds a grievance with a ghost. Jack Solis holds a grievance with you. He mobilized his crew. He placed a bounty on your head. $500,000 for your pulse. Miami resembles a hornet nest hit with a baseball bat this morning." Danny maintained the smirk. He held Howard's gaze. 4 years ago, he sat in an interrogation room across from this man. Howard broke his fingers one by one until he signed the confession. Howard promised him a reduced sentence, then handed him to a bot judge who threw the book at him. The urge to draw the Glock from the small of his back and put a hollow point through Howard's chest burned in his muscles. He pushed the urge down. He needed information. He needed the board arranged to his advantage. Trish walked back into the living room. She wore the emerald sheath dress. She smoothed the fabric over her hips, projecting a mask of bored annoyance. "Captain," Trish said, "you disrupt the morning routine." Howard ignored her. He kept his eyes on Danny. "A man like Jax operates on blunt force. A man like you operates on leverage. You hit the club to cripple his offshore routing. You stole the ledger." "A hypothetical scenario," Danny said. "I live in the real world, Easton. The ledger represents power. Jax uses the police to locate you. He offered me a significant sum to look the other way when his men find you." Howard finished the espresso. He set the delicate cup on the granite bar top with a sharp clink. "I declined his offer. I prefer our arrangement. I appreciate your loyalty. Loyalty costs money." Howard walked away from the bar. He approached the sofa. He stood towering over Danny, blocking the sunlight from the window. The smell of gun oil grew stronger. "My price increased. I require the ledger." Danny did not flinch. He did not break eye contact. "The ledger holds proprietary value," Danny said. "The ledger holds your life." Howard leaned down. He placed his massive, calloused hands on his knees, bringing his face inches from Danny's. "I control the narrative. I provide the alibi. I revoke the alibi. Jax kills you. The police kill Brick. The state confiscates the condo. I take the ledger. I dismantle Jax's operation from the inside. I absorb his territory. You continue to run your clean little offshore scams. We all profit." Howard stared into Danny's eyes. He searched for the familiar cowardice Easton Cross always displayed under pressure. He searched for the capitulation. Danny gave him nothing. He offered the cold, abyssal void of a man who survived the Everglades. A flicker of confusion crossed Howard's face. The sunburned skin tightened. He sensed the shift. He recognized a different predator sitting on the white leather. "You look different today, Easton," Howard whispered. "You lack the usual panic. You carry a specific tension. "You look like a man preparing to draw a weapon." Danny smiled. He uncrossed his legs. He planted his feet flat on the marble floor. "I weigh the options," Danny said. "You possess 0 options." Howard stood up straight. He buttoned his linen jacket, concealing the Sig Sauer. "I expect a phone call by midnight. You bring the ledger to the boat slip. You come alone. You fail to appear, I call Jack Solis. I give him your exact coordinates." Howard turned his back on Danny. He walked to the door. He looked at Trish. He looked at Brick. He opened the heavy door and stepped into the hallway. The door clicked shut. Silence filled the penthouse. The air conditioning hummed. Trish exhaled. Her knees buckled. She collapsed onto the glass coffee table, gripping the edges to steady herself. "He knows. He knows you robbed the club. He wants the whole pie." "Howard controls the board," Brick rumbled. "Howard kills cops who step out of line. He kills civilians. We cannot fight Howard." Danny stood up. He walked to the window. He looked down at the street 50 floors below. Toy cars moved in organized lines. Ant-sized people navigated the concrete. Howard orchestrated the frame job. Howard engineered the false conviction. Easton paid for the service, but Howard executed the destruction of Danny Vance's life. Howard considered himself invincible. He operated above the law, above the cartels, above the offshore brokers. Danny reached to the small of his back. He pulled the Glock 19 free. He checked the chamber. The brass casing of a 9mm hollow point gleamed in the sunlight. "We fight Howard," Danny said. Trish snapped her head up. "You heard him. He brings the police. He brings the cartel. He brings himself to the boat slip at midnight," Danny said. He slid the weapon back into his waistband. "He expects Easton Cross. He expects a terrified finance broker handing over a ledger. He expects an easy transaction." Danny turned to face Trish and Brick. He dropped the Easton Cross smirk. He let the hard, jagged reality of the convict bleed back into his face. "I killed a man in the prison yard to keep a shank out of my kidney," Danny said. The lie tasted metallic on his tongue, but he needed them to believe it. He needed them to fear him more than they feared Howard. "I swam through a swamp filled with predators. I survived. Tip Howard relies on a badge and a reputation. Tonight, we burn his reputation. We burn his life." "How?" Brick asked. The giant's fists clenched. "We use Jack Solis," Danny said. He walked toward the hallway, heading for the bedroom where Trish hid the duffel bag. "We use the money. We set the trap. We let the 2 apex predators tear each other to pieces." He stopped at the edge of the hallway. He looked back at Trish. "Bring me the ledger," Danny ordered. "We have phone calls to make."